أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, please recite a salawat. For his protection and well-being, recite the second one louder. Brothers and sisters, the night of Ashura has arrived. Consider yourselves in Karbala. These are probably the hours that Sayyid al-Shuhada, Salamullah alayh, has gathered his companions in his tent. The gathering in the tent is a very important gathering that we have got to try to consider ourselves part of. This is the gathering that, according to the accounts that talk about it, Imam al-Hussain wanted to make sure whoever remains with him understands and stays with the knowledge that he will be leaving this world and moving towards Shahada the next day. He didn't want them to stay for anything except for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their responsibility. And have people who have such a strong faith in Allah and understand the message of the Imam to an extent that they are willing to stay knowing there's nothing but Shahada the next day. How many of us would have stayed? Which one of us would have stayed? Are we believers of ease and kuffar of hardship? When things become difficult, we give up faith, or do we stay? If we could consider ourselves in that tent and strong enough to have said, yes, even if we are going to die, we will not leave you, Ya Aba Abdullah. We would respond the way Zuhair ibn Qeen, as it has been reported in history. These are not symbolic, brothers and sisters. These are not exaggerations. These are very real. When Zuhair says, after being an Uthmani, now that you know the history a bit more maybe, you understand what an Uthmani is. One of those who, in the conflict between Amir al-Mu'mineen Uthman, was supporting Uthman. He changes. There's always room for change. there's always space for change. He changed to an extent where he says in that night, Ya Abu Abdullah, if they kill me, they burn my body, they throw my ashes in the air, bring me back to life, and the same cycle happens 70 times, I will not leave you. This is real. If we develop that sort of faith and that sort of understanding, and all of us, along with others, were there in Karbala, what happened to Imam al-Hussain wouldn't have even happened. The problem was there were few. There were too few. They needed more people. If they had enough people, that wouldn't have happened. We can now sit and think. This is why we've been talking about this. We want to be that hizb, that party of the Ahlulbayt that has the strength in faith, the strength in understanding, the strength in analyzing what's going on, and work towards the objective of the Ahlul Bayt so that what happened to Imam al-Hussain doesn't happen to the Imam of our time. If we form in the right number throughout the globe, the Imam of our time would come. That's why it's important for us to consider ourselves. Allow some moments on this night to ponder upon this. And if we're not there, if we wouldn't be the ones that we would stay knowing for sure 100% death is awaiting me tomorrow, if I would have left, which I think personally, I don't know about you guys, I think I would have left. I think I would have said, Ya Abu Abdullah, I love you, but I have a family. I have this. I have that. As many people did. And many people do today. Many of us do. It's important. In order to understand the movement of the Ahlul Bayt, we were talking about the sequence, the Holy Prophet and what he did, what happened, his enemies, his friends, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Tonight we want to talk about Imam al-Mujtaba and Imam al-Hussain salamullah alayhi. What happened? One of the most oppressed of our Imams is Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, Ruhi Fidah. He is so oppressed, although he is one of the 5 family members that are well known to everybody, their names, the least knowledge of the Shia is with regards to Imam al-Mujtaba. What happened to him? How many of us know actually what happened to Imam al-Mujtaba? We talk about the Holy Prophet, the Lady Fatima Zahra, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Hussain. What happened to Imam Hassan? Salamullah alayhi. It's important to understand the sacrifice of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, salamullah alayhi. You have to understand that. When Amir al-Mu'mineen was assassinated in Kufa, the next day, people came and pledged allegiance. Amir al-Mu'mineen made it clear Imam Hassan is going to be the leader after him. People came willingly and pledged allegiance. All the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, all of the remaining Sahabi that were there in Kufa, they all pledged allegiance to Imam Hassan. We mentioned that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was working to gather the troops again and to go and fight Muawiyah. In fact, even before Nahrawan, before the Khawarij, he wanted to go and fight Muawiyah again, a second time. But the believers did not show the strength and the readiness. They said, we won't go. So when Imam Hassan came to power, he had to resolve a few issues. He had to make sure everybody knows what they're doing, the different governors of the different regions. He started communicating with Muawiyah, asking him and speaking to him and telling him what his father had also spoken to Muawiyah of. Then he told the believers to go to Nukhayla. This is where the army of the Kufans would always gather, Nukhayla. Imam Hassan told them to go over there. Because of what had happened, and we've spoken so many sessions on the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the 5 years of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Remember, the believers, the ones who supported Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of Jamal, those who remain, now gradually they have become weaker and weaker in faith. The strong ones in faith, many of them fought, many of them went to Siffin, they were martyred. But the ones that remained, they started getting weaker in faith. Some of them became Khawarij. Others started weakness, the dunya, the love of the dunya, the want for an easier life, being tired of so many battles. Amir al-Mu'mineen at the beginning of his Khilafah had said this. Only those who are Ahlul Sabr wal Basar, the ones who are patient, they can take hardship and remain on the right path, and continue, have that perseverance, they will be able to have success in this path. These people had gotten tired. So when he said for people to go to Nukhayla, some went, many didn't. Many didn't. And the ones who did go to Nukhayla were not too strong in faith. Imam Hassan was noticing this. This was a gradual decline that was happening. People seemed very energetic when Amir al-Mu'mineen came to power. Gradually after the first battle, some people start getting weak. Second battle, others get weak. Third battle, there's a decline here. On the other hand, Muawiyah is very joyful. The Khawarij that he kind of pushed to fight Amir al-Mu'mineen, they in the end assassinated Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's able to divide the followers of the Ahlulbayt. So he's not too worried about this side. What he starts doing, he starts what are referred to as al-gharat. Like hyenas, they go and start fighting and breaking off bits and pieces. They went to Yemen, they went to Mecca, not where the stronghold of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hassan was. They started attacking. So all this news is coming. Just imagine yourselves there, people that are already weak from 3 battles, their strength has taken a toll on it. They're getting this news that these cities are falling or the enemy is attacking, looting them and leaving. So these believers are a little worrisome. They're seeing that Muawiyah is gaining power. And not all of them are very strong. This is the circumstances in Nukhayla. Imam Mujtaba realizes that the army that he has in Nukhayla is not sufficient. The numbers are not sufficient to go and fight the battle with Muawiyah. He goes to Madain, which is close to Baghdad of today. He goes over there to try to gather some troops. That was one of the major cities. There was no city of Baghdad at that time. It wasn't established yet. Later on it was established at the time of the Abbasid dynasty. He tries to gather some troops over there. He takes some people with him to gather more troops, and then along with those from Nukhayla come together somewhere before Siffin and then join in Siffin and fight Muawiyah again. What Muawiyah does, the dirty tricks he has and he plays, to take people away from Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, or a few. He has realized the weakness in the people. He already had certain people in Kufa that he was in communication with. So what they do, they start spreading misinformation to weaken, to make people feel weak, that they're losing. Okay. One of the, if you remember in the Battle of Siffin as well, one of the tactics of the enemy to defeat the believers is by spreading lies. Defeating you with words. If the believers are just strong and just remain steadfast and patient and continue and don't give in to the words of the enemy, they would have been victorious in the Battle of Siffin. But they listen to the words. They win the battles in words. They cause you to give up. If you don't give up, you'll win. But they'll do something that you would want to give up. They'll make it seem like you're losing, so you lose that spirit and you stop fighting. The misinformation that he started circulating amongst the companions of Imam al-Mujtaba was that Imam Hassan has agreed to a truce. He's accepted peace. He's given up. There was no word of that. They started spreading that. So believers are wondering, let's leave. There's no point in fighting. He's given up. It takes a toll on those in Nukhayla. Some of the Khawarij who hated Amir al-Mu'mineen and hated Muawiyah, they didn't believe in Imam al-Hassan, but because they hated Muawiyah, they had joined Imam Hassan to go and fight Muawiyah. When the news was circulated that he has accepted the truce, they turned against him. To an extent that they say, in Mada'in, when the Imam was there, some of the people within his camp attacked him while he was on the horse. They took a knife and they cut through the thigh of Imam al-Mujtaba all the way down. And the Imam was wounded. He had to rest for weeks. Imam Mujtaba realizes the decline. Muawiyah buys off some of the main commanders of Imam al-Mujtaba. Ubaydullah ibn Abbas, the younger brother of Abdullah ibn Abbas, is bought off. A few thousand or million gold coins was enough. Sometimes they say everybody has a price. That's not the case. Not everybody has a price, but some people do. Imam al-Mujtaba is noticing this. We have the event in Imam al-Mujtaba's time. Something happens that we are sometimes not understanding why this took place. That is, at this point, Imam al-Mujtaba agreed to a truce, to a peace treaty. No more fighting. We are going to give up. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba salamullah alayh in the end accepted this. This is what we hear. Why did Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba accept this? What was he trying to do? Why did Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba did not fight Muawiyah the way Imam al-Hussain fought Yazid? Why didn't Imam al-Mujtaba say, okay, the likes of me, the way Imam Hussain salamullah alayhi said, that I will never pledge allegiance, I will never have a bay'ah with Yazid. Why didn't Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba say that and say, I'm never going to sign a peace treaty with this man? Because the result of the peace treaty was Muawiyah is allowed to rule. That was the result of it. Is Muawiyah any better than Yazid? Is Imam Hassan afraid of death? Al-ayadhu billah? God forbid. May Allah forgive me for even saying that. Then what is it? What happens in brief is that Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba realizes at the right time that fighting for an Islamic government and to keep and to preserve the Islamic government, which was the heritage of the Holy Prophet handed down to Amirul Mu'mineen and then to Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, this government cannot be preserved any longer. We have two options. One option is to allow the enemy to come forward, and we are stubborn and we say, we had said we are going to fight Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, we're going to keep our word and we're going to continue fighting him, knowing that we don't have enough support amongst the people. So they're going to come and they're going to kill everybody. This is one option. He could have taken that. The other option was to agree to a truce. Why did, out of these two options, Imam al-Mujtaba not accept the death and he accepted the truce? Let's see what the result of death at that time would have been. Is every death that seems to be in a way where a tyrant is killing a ma'soom or a good person that is standing for the right cause, is every death the death of shahada? Or can some death be perceived as suicide? What is the difference between shahada and suicide? What is the difference between Imam Hussain salamullah alayh in Karbala knowing that he's going to become shaheed? Whoever says he didn't know he's going to become shaheed either doesn't know history, doesn't know hadith, or is confused with regards to what suicide is and what the shahada of Imam Hussain salamullah alayh is. What makes that death the death of shahada and not suicide? When a death is to accomplish a profound divine goal, and on the path to accomplish that divine goal you are willing to allow your life to be lost and you lose your life, that is shahada. If you're working in that direction and you're trying to accomplish a goal and you know that you may get killed or you definitely will get killed, but it will have that divine result and effect, that is shahada. But if it's a movement that has no result, it does not help push the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one step forward, and you want to be stubborn and say, I'm standing here even if they kill me, and you get killed. Is that shahada? No. That's suicide. You know they're going to kill you, and you're not helping the cause at all with this death. Why are you doing it? You just wasted your life. That's suicide. If Imam Hassan salamullah alayhi, who is definitely not, like Amirul Mu'mineen said, these the ma'soomeen are kulluhum nurun wahid. Okay? They are the same light. If Amirul Mu'mineen said, don't threaten me of death, I am more interested in desiring of death than a child is to the nursing of their mother. He's real. This is Quranic. In Surah Al-Jum'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Jews, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ هَادُوا إِن زَعَمْتُمْ أَنَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ لِلَّهِ مِن دُونِ النَّاسِ فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. told the Jews, if you're really the chosen people, if God prefers you over everybody else, then you should love to meet the Lord. Death is meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should want that. It's a challenge. You can test your love of Allah. You can test your faith. If somebody has real faith, they're not afraid of death. They're waiting for the moment. They're not going to commit suicide. Okay, that's ridiculous. Because they know that they're going to meet Allah with His wrath, and they will be in hellfire for eternity. But they can't wait for the moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes their life, because that is going to be the moment they will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You think Imam Hassan salamullah alayhi is not waiting for that moment? He's afraid of death. He doesn't know how to fight. They say Imam Hassan was peaceful, Imam Hussain was not peaceful. What is this ridiculous language that is used with regards to the Ahlulbayt? Imam Hussain salamullah alayhi accept the same truce and the same peace treaty that Imam Hassan signed. In fact, some of the companions of Imam Hassan, when they wanted to accept the truce, they looked back at Imam Hussain. The Imam told him, my Imam is this man, Hassan ibn Ali. I do as he does, pledge it and accept the truce. Imam Hassan wasn't afraid of death. But the death of Imam al-Hassan at that time would have been suicide. You know why? Because although Muawiyah was very filthy, although Muawiyah used to drink, he didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly in his heart. He was the cause of all of the corruption that took place afterwards. He started it. He was not any better than Yazid, except for one thing, of course, and that's not a betterness in the person, but rather on a surface level. Muawiyah used to keep his face. He used to keep an Islamic face on him. Yazid didn't even do that. What Imam Hassan wanted to do, if he would have accepted to die, what would have happened would have been that Muawiyah with Amr ibn As would have had, probably, some way they would have done this, but it was very probable. You can see the traces of this in history. They would have gotten the companions of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba to kill him. Muawiyah wouldn't have come and killed him. He would have had all the companions and Imam al-Hussain salamullah alayhi also killed. And then he would have come and probably not just lamented for the death of the grandson of the Holy Prophet or the grandsons of the Holy Prophet, to show that he's actually not wanting for them to get killed. He would have probably come and said, we're going to chastise and punish and put to death those who killed Imam Hassan. And he would have come out clean, and with the ability he had, the evil ability he had to change the culture of the people, he would have made it in history that Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan tried to protect, maybe something along those lines, the household of the Holy Prophet, but his own companions killed him, and he came over and chastised them, and all of Islam would have been finished at that point in history. This is why it would have been suicide. That death is suicide. You're not accomplishing anything. As I said, the traces of this are there. The companions were already attacking. They came into the tent. Again, we're trying to really condense all this history. They came into the tent of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. He was praying. This madloom, he's praying. They pulled the mat from beneath his feet. He fell backwards. They looted his tent, his own companions. His commanders, one by one, left. They wounded him. You think it wasn't easy to pay for somebody to go and kill him? Finish it? Especially in that context, when you have the Khawarij there, hidden. Nobody knows if this guy is a Khariji or not. This is the scene. This is what would have happened. What Imam al-Mujtaba did was, in order to preserve Islam, he said, okay, the point is to preserve Islam. If in history, even some Shia in the future and at that time are gonna come and say, he wasn't willing to fight, let them say that about me, but I'm willing to preserve Islam. This is Imam al-Mujtaba, salamullah alayhi. Sometimes when you hear certain things, you would wish that you were dead and you wouldn't hear this. They say when the Quran says, when Mary, the mother of Jesus, was given the good tidings that she was going to have a child, Jesus, and she never had any relationship with a man, and she was afraid of what they would say about her. And they did say it about her. The verse says, I wish, quoting her, I wish I would have never lived this life. That's how painful it is to hear somebody calling her Al-Ayadu Billah, Al-Ayadu Billah, Al-Ayadu Billah, a prostitute. Just that name, just hearing it. There's someone so pure like Mary, Imam al-Mujtaba, the bravest of the brave, being called a coward, doing something to preserve Islam, is called the one who belittled the believer, Ya Mudhill al-Awliya. He said, let these come my way. This is the sacrifice of Imam Hassan. Let them say whatever they want. He preserved Islam with this. Now what happened with this? This was a very, very brief explanation of it. I encourage, for those who can, unfortunately when we say read, one of the unfortunate things that we have is there's not much material and literature in the English language. This is very unfortunate. In Arabic and Farsi you'll find works. Those who can read, and I encourage those who can to translate some of these books. What happens? What does Imam al-Mujtaba do? Is the peace treaty of Imam al-Mujtaba such that he signs the peace treaty and he leaves Kufa and he goes to Medina and he sits at home and just does dhikr and prayer and that's it? Like, I did my share, let them do whatever they want now? No. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, what he did was the following. Let me run through this history so we can see what happens. There was a time that Islam meant a few believers in Mecca. They didn't have power. The power belonged to, at that time, the mushrikeen. The believers were few, small in number, not enough support. Then the Holy Prophet gathered support and more support until he went to Medina, and that increased. He established a government there and he gathered more support, and he came over and took over Mecca as well and all of Arabia pretty much at his time, which then expanded after him and covered other regions as well. So there was a time that the Holy Prophet had a movement that didn't have government. Then it increased its support until it had government as part of Islam. This government continued on even after the Holy Prophet, although Amir al-Mu'mineen was not the one that led this government, but he, as the Imam, stood, according to his own words. I'm not sure if I quoted them here in these programs and these sessions or not. There are two khutbahs of Amir al-Mu'mineen that talk about this. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, when I realized that, okay, I don't have that, the Khilafah, but Islam needs me, I started to help this government. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, without being seen as the head of this government, guided this government behind the scene. Okay, he's given it that support. So we can say that the government of the Holy Prophet is continued all the way until he came to power as well. Now he's seen as the head of this government. Imam al-Mujtaba initially starts like that as well. But the enemies of the Holy Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen, which we explained, were shirk and that inner enemy of Hawa'un Nafs. They strengthened. We showed how they strengthened during the 25 years. During the 5 years of Amir al-Mu'mineen, there was a third enemy that added on, the lack of basira. These enemies strengthened, especially the enemy of shirk and nifaq, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Their power strengthened until they had enough power to take the government away from the rightful leaders in a different way. There's a difference between Muawiyah taking this Khilafah, which is no longer called Khilafah, and the first 3 Khulafa taking it before Amir al-Mu'mineen. It's a huge difference. Amir al-Mu'mineen, according to his own words, worked with those governments. He didn't fight against them, but Amir al-Mu'mineen fought against Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan is representing shirk in the form of Islam. So they strengthen, they have more power. The reverse of what happened in Mecca happened here. In Mecca, Mushrikeen were in power. Gradually, the Muslims started gaining power until they took control and they took the authority and they had government. But here, it weakened because the people didn't support until those other guys, the Mushrikeen, took control and took power. So what happens? Imam al-Mujtaba transfers the Islamic movement that was in the form of government that should have spread throughout the globe. He took it underground now. It turned into something similar to the time of the Holy Prophet with its difficulties. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba is starting an underground campaign. He's not giving up. He's not going home and sitting down and worshipping and praying and doing dhikr and that's it. No. Those who have read history thoroughly and have had the right precision in analyzing it have realized, based on some of the statements of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, where he said, for example, when the people objected to him, why did you accept this? In passing, he said, he used one of the verses of the Holy Quran, I believe it is verse 111 of Surah Ibrahim, or Anbiya, excuse me. And the verse, the gist of what the verse says is that, how do you know, or what do you know? Maybe this is mata'un ila heen, fitnatun wa mata'un ila heen. This is a test, and the disbelievers are having a mata', something to play around with, government ila heen. This is important. Ila heen, until a time. In other words, we're planning. This is not for good. And also in the peace treaty that he did sign, the conditions he put there. So basically, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba salamullah alayhi has 2 periods in his life. One is the one that ends with the truce, with the peace treaty. Which at that point, he is the leader of the government. He's going to fight Muawiyah. Then when he sees that's not going to work, with full bravery, decides to take this movement and preserve it and take it underground. He's going to have an underground movement for the rest of the 10 years of his life that led to the shahada of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. He continued this battle underground. What is exactly the Imam doing? Something similar to what the Holy Prophet did at that time. The Holy Prophet, if you remember, we said, he had to build people that were strong in faith to be able to uphold this movement. They are the pillars of the movement led by the Holy Prophet at that time. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba realizes, okay, the government was supposed to be there to guide the masses in the right direction, but that requires the support of the masses. If the masses are not going to support, then all right, we'll go back to building individuals. We need to strengthen these individuals and allow them to grow further and further until we can have a movement. And it was very planned out. What do we mean by it? There's a very nice hadith from Imam al-Sadiq salamullah alayh. It says that the qiyam, the uprising, the name of the Imam of our time, I won't mention the Arabic, he is known as the upriser. Sometimes we think the word upriser in Arabic refers only to the Imam of our time. No, that's not the case. Although in the end, he will be the one, and the previous Imams didn't have uprisings in that way. But that doesn't mean that the previous Imams weren't planning on becoming the uprisers. All of them were planning on uprisings. This hadith from Imam al-Sadiq says that the uprising and the government, the success of the government of the Ahlulbayt, which we know now is going to happen when the Imam of our time is going to come, so that was supposed to happen in the year 70. The year 70 is 10 years after the Shahada of Imam Al-Hussain salamullah alayh. What is this trying to tell us? Something supernatural? It's talking about the government of the Ahlul Bayt. Government is something that has to do with people, and people's decisions are very important in that actually happening or not happening. So what this means is that the plan was, if people would have supported, they would have established the Islamic government of the Ahlul Bayt back again in the year 70. In other words, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba is working towards that. If it wasn't for what Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba did, you would not have had the believers and the companions of Imam al-Hussain. Imam Hassan was part of the process of building these individuals. This part of history is very important. From now on, from the time of Imam al-Mujtaba after the peace treaty, all the way until Imam al-Askari, and currently the Imam of our time, this is what they did. Building foundations for the Islamic government. At each stage of that history, based on the circumstances and conditions, they planned for a given time. If the believers would have followed through, the Imams did their share. If the believers would have followed through, the qiyam and the uprising of the Imams would have happened in the year 70. But because people didn't, I'm going to go to Imam al-Hussein's time. Let's see this. Imam Hassan continues this process. He's trying to build people. Imam Hassan is assassinated. Imam Hussain becomes the Imam. He continues for 10 years. During the time of Muawiyah, what is Imam Hussain doing? We don't hear that. We start history on the day Muawiyah died. What happened to the 10 years? Imam Hussain didn't have an uprising. He signed the truce and the peace treaty. Okay. What is he doing? He's continuing with what Imam Hassan was doing. He's building these people. The Shia are being built, are being guided by Imam al-Hussain for the 10 years. You think it's a coincidence that when Muawiyah dies, after 20 years of the fall of the Alawid government, after 20 years, there are still people in masses, in large numbers, in Kufa that are wanting to have an Alawid government? You think they were able to preserve that heat? They were able to preserve that faith. With what Muawiyah was doing, they should have been finished. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Imam al-Hussain kept blowing into it and making sure the hot coals that they have put there are igniting more and more people are adding on. This is why they got 18,000 people to pledge allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil. This is the continuation of that. This is the reason why. It's what Imam Hassan did and Imam Hussain did in the 10 years. But that hadith says from Imam as-Sadiq that the year 70 would have been the year of the uprising. Because the believers didn't do their share. Again, they failed. The believers failed. We have to think of ourselves, brothers and sisters, on this night. That's why we talked about the tent. Are we going to fail again, or are we not going to fail? How many times are we going to fail? The Ma'sumin. How many times are we going to postpone the dhuhr of the Imam for another century because we're not doing our share? If the believers in Kufa would have done their share appropriately, the death of Imam Hussain wouldn't have happened. You think Imam Hussain went there to get killed? Yes, the news was there that Imam Hussain is going to get killed. He didn't go there to get killed. He went for islah, to reform. This reform, if the people would have supported him, if the people would have made the right choices, the right decisions, that islah would have happened with an Islamic government again. So building, during these 20 years, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain are building individuals. We got to think of ourselves, brothers and sisters. Again, learn. This is why all these nights we've been talking about this. We have to consider ourselves in those circumstances, because we are. The Imam of our time is trying to see who is building themselves and making themselves ready enough for him to pull them in. Say, okay, here's what you need to do. Now, this is not to suggest, and if anybody comes and says the Imam of our time has spoken to me in that way, you can call him a liar straight out. Because if anyone is entrusted by the Imam, the reason why they're entrusted is because they have tight lips. They don't talk to anybody about it. They are people. We have hadith on this. We have hadith on this from Imam as-Sadiq, that during the time of the occultation, there will be people that will have that type of connection with the Imam of our time. There are people that are like that, but they don't talk about it. They don't even allude to it. They just follow orders because they've prepared themselves. Are we doing that? When Yazid came to power, that decline of the Muslimin and moving towards corruption, that move picked up momentum and speed, because now you have Yazid ibn Muawiyah, this man who is not even willing to express himself as a Muslim, is not even willing to keep his face seen as a Muslim, openly drinking, openly talking about his relationships with women illegitimately. This calls for a serious movement. It's no longer the time to work on individuals and trying to keep them alive, because trying to keep them alive with this tyrant coming into power, these guys are also going to become part of that movement that is going to go and move towards decline further and further and further. So the Imam had to change the tactic. And that's why he said, okay, we have to have this uprising. Whoever is ready, let's go. Bismillah. He talked to people, he spoke to people in Mecca, in Medina, on the path from Mecca. You know, there's from Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan, Dhul Hajj, in Mecca, the Imam is talking. At what time? During the time after Shawwal, people start gathering in Mecca for Umratul Tamattu'. So it starts getting packed with Muslimin from all around the Muslim empire. Imam Hussain chose this location for this reason. He's speaking to people, heads of tribes, convincing them, this is what's going on. We got to change this. This is who Yazid is. Nobody's willing to even speak about who Yazid is. Sounds like today, some people don't want to talk about the Zionist regime. They don't want to talk about the atrocities that the West, the Western governments, the United States of America, oh hush hush. These are the mushrikeen of today. These are the Sufyanis of today. Who do you think Sufyani is? Some guy related to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan? The leaders of shirk of today that are the enemies of the Imam of our time. We talked about this whole history so you can see who the enemies are. We're going to expand on this tomorrow night, inshallah, further. People were not even willing to talk about Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, ibn Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Imam Hussain talks and talks and talks. People don't support him there. He sends Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim goes to Kufa. He gathers a following because those seeds were there. Those strong believers were there. Not strong enough yet, maybe some of them, but they were there. But some of the ridiculous mistakes and failures of the believers in Kufa led to this. That lack of basira, ignorance, love of the dunya came into the picture again. When Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came to Kufa, you know how many people he came with? 7, 8 people. 7, 8 people. How many people pledged allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil? 18,000 people. How many of them would have taken to kill and just completely finish them off? They say when Ubaidullah came, it's clever. See, the problem we have is that the enemies are clever. Believers sometimes become so dumb and so stupid. It's just ridiculous. They just covered their face. They just covered their face. And then when they entered, since people were expecting Imam al-Hussain, they said, oh, Hussain ibn Ali has come to town. They didn't even ask him. And they escorted him to Darul Imara, the palace of the governor of Kufa. He went inside and he was probably bowing to people, thank you, thank you, thank you, whatever. He got in, he closed the doors, he went on top, unveiled himself, laughing his head off at these idiots. This is the lack of basira. They just circulate some misinformation and everybody just accepts it. Oh, everybody's saying it's Imam Hussain. That's it. Did you check the source? Some person has said this. A believer, I can't reveal their name, but they're very trustworthy. Yeah, the BBC. Probably. Why are we like this? It would have taken less than probably 20 people even to get rid of them and finish them off and then join Imam al-Hussain. The whole thing would have been completely different. Then what did he do? Just 5, 7 people in Kufa? He changed it, he just turned things upside down? Like, how powerful is this man? He just came in and bribed a few heads of tribes and started spreading rumors. There's people coming from Sham, and that whoever joins that, they're going to be killed. Fear. Love of the dunya. Hani ibn Urwa is taken into the dungeons. They could have revolted. failure after failure after failure in Kufa. Just a few people come and join Imam al-Hussein from Kufa. All those 18,000 people, only a few end up joining Imam al-Hussein. They don't necessarily join the enemies of the Imam either, the rest of the 18,000. Some of them may have. Not necessarily. Just 18,000 people, failure. It's of ignorance, lack of insight, and love of the dunya. The enemy is clever. You got to be clever too. Stop being naive. Imam al-Hussein sees that, okay, the only way to make this change, this whole society is switched tracks in a way that it's leading to destruction, complete destruction. Somebody needs to bring this back on track. He goes out and he says, he goes with women and children as well. He knows that this is not going to end with his government. There were signs that that wasn't going to happen. There were signs. But his objective was to do islah, reform the ummah of the Holy Prophet. He went there. If government would have been possible, if people wouldn't have made those ridiculous mistakes and those failures in Kufa, he would have gotten control of that region and started up again a government. But according to that hadith, the hadith of Imam al-Sadiq said that because of what the people did to Imam al-Hussein, the movement was postponed. The qiyam was postponed. Imam Hussein realized, okay, even if we're not going to get government, in order to bring this ummah back on track, we've got to continue with our uprising, even if we're going to get killed, because now the circumstances are different. Now if all the men get killed, Yazid is not the type of person that can do what his father could do. And Imam al-Hussein has brought his women and children with him. They play a very important role in this whole movement. I wanted to finish this story, but it seems like we're going to have to leave part of it for the following night. But brothers and sisters, this night, on top of the aza, which we should participate in, we should be beating our chests hard to mourn for Imam al-Hussein. But while we're doing that, let's not just think of the sorrow and the grief of Imam al-Hussein at that time. Try to think of the sorrow and the grief of the Imam of our time today, because his believers and his followers are failing the way that the followers of Imam al-Hussein were failing. We've got to think of ourselves, brothers and sisters. Is the hawa'un nafs strong in me the same way? As soon as there's this threat of maybe losing my job, I completely shut up. It's not even losing life, losing job. Let's just have nothing to do with this. It's hawa'un nafs. Am I naive? I gotta build that insight, inshaAllah. Assalamu alaykum Ya Ahlulbayt وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومهبط ومعدنا الرحمة وخزان العلم ومنتهى الخير. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved Holy Prophet, and the Ahlulbayt. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. It was in your homes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with guidance and revelation. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. Angels descend upon you day in and day out, seeking permission before entering upon you. Sallallahu alayk ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayk ya Madhlum. أيها الشهيد بكربلاء عطشانا. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved Imam Al-Hussain. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved oppressed Imam. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, the Imam that was slaughtered by the shores of the Euphrates, while his mouth was dry of thirst. Sallallahu alayhi. Sallallahu alayhi. Imagine this night, brothers and sisters. It's Laylat Ashura. Tomorrow is the last hours of the life of the Imam and his companions. Imagine what is happening in the campsite of Imam Al-Hussain. We've all heard about the story of the tent. Imagine Imam Al-Hussain telling his companions, I want you to leave. I want you to take my women and children with you as well. And turning off the lights, imagine Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, Zuhair ibn Qin, Habib ibn Madahir, Ali al-Akbar, sitting there before Imam al-Hussain, maybe in tears because they hear some people leave. Sallallahu alayhi. This is not the only thing that happens on this night. Some say they found Imam Al-Hussain walking around the tents, picking up any thorns on the ground. My children would be running around tomorrow. Say something else also happens, brothers and sisters. Some have said the lady Zainab starts to look for Imam Al-Hussain. She finds him picking up the thorns. He says to his brother, Ya Aba Abdullah, my beloved brother, you know how much love I have for you. She says, Ya Aba Abdullah, I'm afraid, I'm fearful. What are you fearful of? She says, I'm afraid that these companions of yours are not loyal. I'm afraid that these companions will leave you in the morning. I'm afraid they will betray you the way they betrayed your father and brother. They say one of the companions is watching this and hears the lady Zainab. He goes to the companions and says, why are you sitting? Aqilatu Bani Hashim is doubtful of your loyalty. They all gather before her. Ya Aqilatu Bani Hashim, we will do whatever we can. We will put our lives before the life of Imam Al-Hussain. They showed that loyalty, brothers and sisters. One of the companions stood in front of Imam Al-Hussain when the Imam wanted to pray. He said, I'll stand before you to protect you. When those arrows came from the enemies, he took the arrows with his body. He stood fast and stood up, preventing the arrows from reaching the Imam. Until when his prayer was over, the man fell to the ground. He looked up to Imam Al-Hussain. Afaradit, are you pleased with me? Can we say the same to the Imam of our time? How wonderful it would be if the last moments of my life in this world I would see the Mahdi of Fatima and I could ask him the question and see a smile on his face. But brothers and sisters, there came a time in Karbala that all these companions were gone. Imam Al-Hussain looked to his right and to his left. He doesn't see Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas anymore. Ali al-Akbar is gone. Even Ali al-Asghar is gone. He calls out, هل من ناصر ينصرني. هل من ذاب يضب عن حرم رسول الله? Is there anyone to help me? Is there anyone to help the family of the Holy Prophet? Sallallahu alayhi. He went to the battlefield with his thirsty mouth and he's fighting the enemy. Now it's only your Imam and thousands of the enemy attacking from all directions. Those who have swords are trying to strike the Imam with their swords. Those who have spears are trying to attack the Imam with their spears. Those who have arrows throw arrows towards the Imam. Those who have none gather stones and pebbles in their hands and they're throwing at the Imam. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. I wish I was there, they would strike me instead of you. Every now and then the Imam would take a breath. They say he would come close to the tents. He would shout out, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, notifying and signaling to the women and children, rest assured I'm still alive. A few times he came over, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. You've heard of the many farewells of the Imam, but there came a time for a while Zainab and the women in the tent are not hearing the Imam. They're wondering what is happening. Suddenly they hear the sound of a horse outside the tents. They think to themselves, Alhamdulillah, that sounds like Dhul Janah, the horse of the Imam. The father has come back to say another farewell. He's still alive. But they went out the tents to see Dhul Janah is without a rider, filled with arrows. Zainab starts calling, Wa Muhammadan, Wa Aliyah. What's happening to my brother? She tries to find an elevation so she can see what is happening. She goes on top of what is known as Tallu Zainabiyah. She goes up there to see والشمر جالس على صدره. What are you doing to my brother? Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina, Wa Hussaina.